Next, we have Emacs Editors and LLM-Driven Workflows by Andrew Hyatt. He will answer questions via web conference. You can join using the URL from the talk page or ask questions through Etherpad or IRC.
Hi, I'm Andrew Hyatt. I'm going to talk to you today about Emacs and AI and where things are right now in the world of Emacs and AI via large language models, and where things might be going, and what it means for the future of Emacs. And I think what we're seeing with Emacs is interesting. We've seen a lot of different things come around in the past year, in the past several years. There's lots of different solutions, but in the past year, things have been very interesting. And I think there's new and interesting questions about what does it mean to use Emacs? What does it mean to use any editor? I'm going to be talking about Emacs, and I'm going to show you various Emacs packages as demonstrations of these ideas. But there's the general question of what does it mean to use any editor, not just Emacs? What does it mean to do work? And I think the industry in general is facing these challenges of we don't really know where things are going to end up, but we do know the direction they're going. And Emacs is a reflection of that. And I think the answer for Emacs might be a little bit different than everything else, but I do want to show you what's out there so we could explore what are the possibilities of Emacs, AI, and generally how we get things done. Thanks, let's dive right into it. We're going to start by showing you some things that are pretty well integrated, that look a lot like what you see in Emacs and fit in with the kinds of editing that you normally do in Emacs. So this is just kind of like, it's well integrated. So we're going to talk about Copilot and SemExt. Copilot is by Microsoft via GitHub, and SemExt is just my personal demo, but they're both showing you, this kind of thing. Let's start with Copilot. Let's try out Copilot on just a standard bit of eLisp. We're going to write a Fibonacci function. Let's try out Emacs on a standard bit of eLisp. We're going to write a Fibonacci function. And you can see, as soon as we even start typing it, we get everything as a completion. So you can just press tab here, and you've just completed a significant bunch of Emacs Lisp code, and it will do this no matter where you are. So pretty useful, and it will just keep suggesting things. And do you want to do this? I'm not sure, but it usually is offering pretty reasonable things. So you could do this with code, of course, any code. You don't really even have to have a mode for it, right? That's kind of the beauty of AI, is that you don't need any Emacs functionality for this except for Copilot. It doesn't need to know the structure of your code. It doesn't need anything except for the text itself and whatever AI integration that this is. We can look at, you can do the same thing with org mode. So we could say create, how about let's do spring cleaning. It's actually the fall, but still we'll say spring cleaning. And it'll start suggesting things that, maybe at first it doesn't really know what to clean up all code. It thinks I need to clean up code. But no, this is going to be actual, clean hood over range. Yes. Clean up pantry. These are all really reasonable suggestions. And you just keep going here. I'm going to demonstrate SemExt, which is a package I have on New Alpa that is designed to integrate AI in a very Emacs-like way. And so what you could do is you could do a SymEx search forward. So, the UI looks just like other Emacs commands, but you can search for anything. There's really no way to express what I'm trying to demonstrate in Emacs normal search commands. So you could really ask for anything. And it takes a little while, which is not Emacs-like, but everything else is sort of like, it's designed to be like Emacs, except way more powerful. You don't need any mode to be active for this. You just need, you just need the library and a AI provider of some sort, either locally or, your favorite cloud provider. Now we're going to move on to a different way of interacting with AI and Emacs. This way is less like the normal editing experience, so you lose some familiarity. However, it is in exchange, it is a lot more powerful. And there's a whole suite of these tools. I'm going to demonstrate GPTL, which is the most popular one, but there are many, and I think different people have their own preferences of what they like to use. We're going to try now something that is a step away from just editing, and I'm going to show you using GPTL. There are several packages that are going to be doing the same sort of thing as I'm going to show you. GPTL has sort of become the most popular one, so this is why I'm showing that to you. But let's just highlight everything and say GPTL rewrite. And GPTL basically just has a few things. There's different ways of thinking about this, but with just a few very configurable menus, you could do a large variety of things. So let's give rewrite instructions. Turn this into an iterative program instead of recursive. In eLisp, you really should not be using recursion. So we could say return to be ready. Do we accept it? Yes, we accept it. Or we could iterate and say like, no, that's not what we meant. We meant something else. Or you did something wrong. Please fix it. So this is all very powerful. Is this editing? Well, it's in the editor, and you could do this while editing, while deleting. You could be doing some sort of traditional editing, and then this, which is editing in the sense that it's in your editor, you might have to highlight some parts of the file and do things. But generally, you don't even need to, or you go to a spot and you say, put code at this spot. It's kind of like editing. I would say it's not exactly editing, but it's at least something that must happen in an editor, and it's well integrated into Emacs. It's, as you can tell, it used very sort of modern standard Emacs UI paradigms, and it's all written in eLisp. Everything is happening in eLisp here. So this is just very much an Emacs experience. It's just not exactly editing, because the thing doing the editing is the AI and not you. You're just kind of telling it what to do. Now we're going to go and look at a way of interaction that's even more powerful and even more disconnected from the normal editing experience. In fact, it's so disconnected that most people are using this without an editor. These are things like Claude Code, or the sort of open source equivalent, Aider. There's a few other things that follow this pattern as well. But it's very interesting in the sense that while you can integrate these with the editors, and I'm going to show you an Emacs integration, you don't need to. And that's not the way most people are using them. And I find it very interesting that sort of we're going back kind of full circle where, in the 1960s or 70s, we were using ed and from the terminal to edit files. But then we created editors, and that was a really good idea. It is a lot easier to edit files when you have an actual UI. But now it's 2025 and we're back in the terminal and we're editing files through the terminal. And you know what? It's great. But I think it's even better with Emacs. On the other hand, it comes with some trade-offs, as you can see, as we will see. Okay, we're going to look at so code IDE, Emacs, last time I didn't show you all the variants. I do want to show you ECE, which I think points to, it is a very similar tool in what it does, but does have a different and I think better type of Emacs integration. All right, we're going to demonstrate Claude Code IDE, which is one of 3 Claude Code packages. It's a bit confusing. One of them will be demoed by another presenter at the Emacs conference, so stay tuned for that. Here I'm just going to give you a little taste of what these packages look like. So if we say Claude Code IDE, it presents us with basically almost exactly what you would get when you're running this in a terminal. And essentially there's a terminal interface. You can see that there's a vterm. But here we're going to say, in Scratch, let's say what we want to happen. So you just say what's going to happen, and this is going to do things in the background. It's not going to do things through Emacs. That said, there is an integration with Emacs so that it could do things like show you these nice edifs. And you know, my screen is not really wide enough to show you a really great edif here, but you can kind of see what it's doing. And you can say like, yeah, that looks good. And so you could say yes, accept the changes. And if we just need to revert the buffer, and we can quit out of this, and we see that like, okay, it just did everything I asked it to. Like, is it everything exactly right? Well, you know, probably not. It's reasonable for a start though. But you could ask it to do anything. You could say write unit tests for this, and it will. You could say, you know, write me a suite of functions like Fibonacci, and they'll probably do something reasonable. But you can see, like, this is not editing. There's nothing editing-like about this. That said, the editing, there is something that is editing. That's, you need to give it instructions. You need to tell it what to do. And what you could do is, you know, you could have like a project.org, and what you could do is you could have like functions. The way I've done things often is you could say something like unit tests for Fibonacci, and how do you spell Fibonacci? I don't remember. But then you could say that this is, you could clock in basically, or clock in. And what I've done is you could add custom commands to Claude Code, and you could just say, look, here's my org file, read it and do the thing that I'm clocked in as. And then you could write a bunch of instructions here, like I like to use ERT for tests. Tests should, like, whatever. You should just say, you know, everything you need to kind of specify. You know, as you get to more complicated tasks, it's harder and harder to give it all the context that it needs for a task. And org mode is actually a pretty good way to do this. And so I find that this works pretty well. And you can even have it instruct Claude to just mark things done in your org file when they're done. And it knows how to do this, of course. So let's just plug out. So that's one way to do things. So one other thing I'd like to show you is ECA, which compared to Claude Code, ECA is it's open source. It's very nice in that respect. It doesn't have to use Anthropic's models. You can use local models, but it has the advantage of integrating very well with Emacs. I'm not going to demonstrate it because it works essentially the same thing. You could do approximately the same kinds of things you could do with Claude Code. Is you just write what you want to happen and it will make it happen. And it, again, does not do this through Emacs. But what it does do is it gives you a much better Emacs interface that's not terminal based, because it's you're not using it through the terminal or not even through comment. You are using it through a backend that is exchanging structured information with this process that is doing all the work. But other than that, it's the same model as Claude Code and projects of that nature. So we've seen in the demos that I gave that there are AI experiences that are very natural in the world of editing because they, like Copilot, just offers completion. It fits very well with what we all do in Emacs. And it's truly, yes, it's kind of a cheat in a sense for editing experiences because it can do so much, but it's just editing. Whereas things like GPT-EL and those kinds of tools, they are clearly in an editor and using editor, they're using Emacs, but they represent sort of like, well, you can edit for a while, then you could use these tools to do something that is not editing, this AI just changing the buffer for you. And that's fine. It may not be editing, but it's still clearly something that is useful to do in Emacs and belongs in Emacs. But the new tools like Claude Code and things like that are kind of different. Yes, they will get better integrated with Emacs, but it's not clear that they really need to. They can do a lot of things without editing. In a sense, editing is obsolete in some sense. For many tasks, you don't need to edit anymore. And that's a nice thing. No one really knows when all this will end, how far things will go. It could be that, in a decade or so, no one's really editing for work anymore. Maybe you're just writing instructions. You could do that with anything. You don't need Emacs or any special editor. We could all be using Notepad. That would be bad. But I think it could go that far, but it could be that, well, for many specialized things, people are still using editing for certain tasks, but most tasks are getting fed to just AI is just doing those things. In any case, I think it's clear that editing is diminishing the need for editing itself. And in such a world, it's interesting to think where Emacs is headed, especially in relation to all the other editors. I think people will use Emacs less, but I think other editors like VS Code may simply disappear or be a relatively fringe tool. And Emacs is going to follow its own path. It's very extensible. It could do anything. If there's one thing Emacs can do, it's adapt. And Emacs has been around for a long time. And it's pretty clear that Emacs will be around for a long time. And it might be that in the future, editing is some sort of like an artisanal activity that we do. It's kind of weird to think about it. It's not like baking bread, but it is the sense that like AI might be churning out code the way, the factories are churning out bread. But if you really want the good stuff, you'll have to do it yourself. And I don't know if it'll be exactly like that, but it could be that Emacs survives and thrives in a very kind of specialized ecosystem of people who contribute and use it in the way it has survived and thrive right now. And I think that's a really nice way for all this to end up. I mean, there's the whole sense of how society will end up if all this happens. I don't know, but Emacs will be there for us when whatever happens. So thank you, and let's help make Emacs the best it could be to survive and thrive in the next decade.
And then the Q&A can get started. Let's go see. Hang on a second. Boop, 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 boop. And drag this over this side.
We should have audio live now.
All right, take it away.
Right.
Hey, thanks for joining us for the Q&A session. I'm here with Andrew, who we've just finished watching his talk, and I'm gonna turn it over to you, Andrew. I think we've already started to see some of the questions come in. I'll be over here just to help make sure we get them into the pad and throw in some of my own if we run low. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Cohen. Thank you, Sasha. So I'm just going to answer the questions as I see them on the pad. So yeah, this first question is really good. And I think it's actually this great thing that I did not mention is that, like, if you have unsaved buffers, which is, when you're actually doing editing, most buffers are unsaved. Really, you need something tightly integrated with Emacs to deal with that. So things like, I demonstrated Copilot, I demonstrated GPT-EL, things like those things like ELAMA. These things will all work with unsaved buffers because they work via, the input is the buffer as opposed to a file. Things like Claude Code, Gemini Code, etc. Those are working with files. They have no idea what is going on with your buffers. And it could be that, like, you can solve this problem by using this thing called MCP, which kind of gives the coding agent a way to see anything in particular. In this case, it would be Emacs and the state of your buffers. But I think that's not a particularly great solution if that's how you want to work. But I think that's kind of like if you're in the Claude Code, that kind of world where things are happening basically through a terminal. You don't really. It's okay. Like you typically would not be doing a mix of things. You would just be doing things either in one place or the other place. It could be that you switch off from one place to another, but you wouldn't be doing both at the same time. And it's kind of you tend to just fall into one editing outside the editor or editing inside the editor. And I find myself switching between the two when I use those kinds of tools. So
David, let me interrupt you for just one moment. I want to just take care to read out the question that we're answering. The question was, my biggest question with AI code editors trying to integrate with Emacs is, are the AI code editors able to read unsaved buffers and not just save files? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for reminding me to. Thanks. I will read the questions from now on. But yes, that's what I think about that and interesting questions about unsaved buffers. The next question is, I don't agree with the comment you made about VS Code usage dying out because I see companies and products pushing for tightly integrated agent and products like Windsurf. So thoughts on that? Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to be certain of anything. Like, things are changing very fast, and it's very hard to predict the future. But the trend I see is that the sort of outside editing experience where you just kind of instruct a model what to do is getting better. And as long as that keeps getting better, I think that's going to lessen the demand for these tightly integrated editing experiences. So it could be that a lot of people, especially in corporate environments, just start using, they're going to use whatever is going to make them most productive. And I think right now it's not clear that that will be the very agent-based command line centric way of doing things. But it's certainly, the trend is, if that continues, I think it probably will be like that. So I think we'll have to see. I don't think your opinion is unreasonable. I guess I'm kind of cautiously saying I think it's going to be the opposite, but I guess we'll see. Like, let's reconvene in a year and see what happens. The third question.
That answer.
Do you have any thoughts about the environmental costs of using LLMs? Either the training of the models are we can download or use locally, or the larger commercial models used from the cloud. I think I'm on social media probably a little bit more than I should be. And I do see a lot of discussion there and a lot of concern about the environmental costs of using LLMs. I've looked into this, as I'm also concerned about keeping my environmental footprint personally down. And I do this in many ways, but I certainly don't want to kind of like blow that all the water because I'm using LLM so much. I think that the concerns are mostly overblown. There's a concern that like, well, it uses a lot of energy. In aggregate, the total amount of energy used by the data centers in the US is a few percent. And this is a fraction. I think this is like LLMs account for something like 20% now of all data center usage, which is a lot. But those data centers are doing lots of things. They all need to be water cooled. If you like per LLM prompt, the costs are relatively small. And by relatively small, I mean, people have said online, well, it's like a few bottles of water per prompt. That is not true. It is much, much less than that. It's a fraction of that. So I don't think the answer is nothing, but I would say you probably, if you want the most bang for your environmental buck, probably the best thing for you to do is take less flights and things like that. Like, yes, you can cut down on this, but I think it's pretty marginal at the moment. We do probably need to think about the total costs, like of humanity using all of this. Like a lot of stuff, you'll see corporations are using a lot of these things. And so just like if you look at water usage or energy usage in total, it's like really corporations that are using this. So there's a lot of leverage there to make things more efficient as opposed to personal use. So I think it's wise to be cautious, but I think it's okay, at least for personal use. The next question is this is also disagreeing with me about VS Code, but it says, I must say I liked your conclusion, but I differ insofar as you said that VS Code differs from Emacs because the former is not as easy to adapt as the latter. But why should Microsoft not adapt VS Code as we adapt Emacs for the new era of coding? And why would VS Code be harder hit? Could you please elaborate on this point? Yeah, thanks. This is a good question. I think maybe I wasn't as sharp on my point as I could be, because I think the core of what I'm saying is like, there is going to be a trend. I believe there will be a trend away from editing. And if we are going to be editing less, I think VS Code, like people will be in editors less. And that means that people will be in VS Code less. People will probably be in Emacs less. And then, yes, I think VS Code is to some degree extensible, but I think there's less of a community, or that is, I think the people using Emacs have used Emacs for a long time. They're going to continue to use Emacs. I speak for myself, but I know a lot of people here are kind of like this, and they're going to just like, we have a lot of momentum to keep doing things in Emacs, and especially because we have a lot of things that we already do in Emacs. We do to-do lists and with org mode, and some people read email, and some people are using shells in Emacs, and all these things I think will make Emacs kind of a better environment if you want to do various editing-like things in Emacs, in an editing environment. Because I think just Emacs can edit more types of things. I think it'll naturally be a bit more useful than VS Code, which people are really just using to edit code. And if people find it less useful to edit code, I think VS Code will be harder hit than Emacs, because that's its whole, that's in the name. Like the whole reason for it to be doing things is to edit code. So I think that it's it's vulnerable in a way that Emacs isn't, just because Emacs is so very, it could do so many things, and people use it for so many different kinds of things that it's. I think it's going to be a little bit more resilient. But as I said with the other question,
omnipresent, right? For those of us that are using Emacs, it's everywhere for us. Not necessarily everyone is an I live in Emacs person, but whatever you're using Emacs for, it is the thing you reach for to do that thing. Is that touching on your point?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Thank you, Corin. Yeah, thank you for that question. Do you think we're falling behind in productivity as Emacs users compared to all these VS Code forks that have 1,000 button and text boxes everywhere, which are basically much richer UIs, which are basically web pages? I do think Emacs is falling behind in some ways. I mean, it's definitely showing its age a little bit, especially you mentioned richer UIs that are basically web pages. I mean, this I think is one of the big problems Emacs has, is that it uses a very a much more ancient way of kind of doing UIs that is not particularly flexible and not particularly comfortable for any modern UI coder. And I think if you look at the Emacs stuff out there, like, yes, you can do a few things with UIs. You can have some amount of UI richness, but it's pretty limited. And if there's one thing I could wish for in Emacs, it's sort of like, I kind of wish Emacs could be be built on top of basically like Atom or something like that, where it's like a web framework that allows us to write actual rich pages, rich UIs in a modern style, using things like CSS instead of the kinds of things Emacs lets you do. But that said, that is an advantage of VS Code and other editors like that. But I think that Emacs does a good job of eventually catching up to all sorts of things people are doing in other editors. It's often that other editors get there first, but there's a lot of momentum to kind of keep Emacs fresh, keep it modern, and it's pretty easy to extend. Yeah. Sorry.
I forgot about the lag. We do have a little bit of lag, but I find that very captivating. We have, with technologies like Apache Cassandra in the database world, we have this idea of eventual concurrency. And you make me think with Emacs, we have this idea of eventual feature parity, right? If a feature stays desirable long enough, Emacs will eventually grow it. I think that's a very contagious idea.
Yeah, thanks. I hope that's... I hope that idea makes sense, and I hope it's correct, because I think that I do want Emacs to continue to succeed, and I personally, using Emacs, do not feel myself falling behind in productivity. That said, there's a lot of ways that Emacs can improve and should improve on this front, and I hope a lot of these ways are pretty fundamental. So I kind of hope people pay a lot of attention to some of these more fundamental, lower level Emacs things that really allows the packages to do more richer and better things.
Sorry, you have a ton of questions. I shouldn't be doing so much active listening.
No, I appreciate your input. Okay, next is, I've been using Claude Code extensively. I recently switched to Agent Shell with Claude Code. Have you tried it, and what are your thoughts? I actually have tried Agent Shell, and currently, I recorded this video like 3 months ago, so I didn't. Agent Shell did not exist then. If Agent Shell did exist, I probably would have demoed it as well. Agent Shell is great in the sense of it does use comment, which is the way that I think all Emacs users would prefer to interact with something like Claude Code or any of those types of tools, which is like, I don't, but it's a trade-off. It uses, like, on the back end, it has a comment buffer, and then on the back end, it's using a protocol to talk to Claude Code and other things. The problem is this has a lot of problems. For example, like, you don't have completion of / commands. You don't have, if you ask to see in Claude Code, you can get a visual representation of the context window. but you can't do this. I mean, last time I tried, I couldn't do this in Agent Shell. It's progressing rapidly, but it's not as rich in functionality as using Claude Code directly. On the other hand, because it's letting Emacs be Emacs and using comment, it's a much better experience to actually give it instructions. I think the maximum power though, like, is, to me, the best way is still like, do your editing in org mode, and then just you could have, the richer experience of using Claude Code in its more like shell-like form, where everything it's much, designed to be used in the terminal, but you don't have to type in that much because you're really doing your typing in org mode. To me, I think this is kind of the sweet spot that I like. But Agent Shell is a great step forward, and I think it's quite good to use, and I personally use it a lot. Okay, so next question, in terms of agent selection, what has been your experience with different agents? And have you had any success with hosting your own models and using open weights? I think there's, many people have many different opinions on this. I think Claude Code is, most people I know would say Claude is probably the best for coding right now. Gemini can be very hit and miss, even with 3.0. But Claude is quite good. And 4.5 Opus is actually relatively cheap compared to the previous version of 4.1 Opus. There's other models out there, but I think most people just kind of stick with Claude because of just it's very reliable, it's very good, and nothing is obviously better than that. And as far as DeepSeek is pretty good as well, and then much cheaper. I've had some good luck using that locally, but actually the problem is for my day-to-day machine, my personal machine, it's not powerful enough to run anything locally. And my work machine, it is powerful enough, but I can spend, my company's money at will on more powerful models. So there's really not a lot of incentive for me to run locally. I think, as far as I know, I haven't heard of local models being incredible, but I think you can get reasonable quality with them. That is, especially if you're doing relatively simple things, I think it's pretty reasonable to be using those. Also, they tend to be slower than the models that are elsewhere, just because they just have more horsepower. They can churn through those tokens a little quicker.
So I'll just break in here to say we've got about 7 minutes left before we're cutting over. This great discussion so far. I'm very happy to keep going. There's no time limit, but at a certain point I may have to leave to jump in and prep with the next speaker. But you'll be able to keep going as long as you have the steam for it.
I think we have 3 questions. Yeah, thanks. I think we have 3 questions. Let's see if we can get through them all in that time period.
Sure.
Okay, this one is interesting talk. I'll start by asking it for everything, but is it editing? I think there's more of a comment than a question. So yes, let us all ask, but is it editing? All right, moving.
I can move back to the comment area.
I'm reading angst in your thinking about AI editing. I think that's true. It says, and the question continues with, what are you excited about? Wow, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think there are possibilities. Like, yes, people are going in sort of a relatively obvious direction with LLMs right now. And I think there's lots of opportunities, clever opportunities to do things we couldn't have thought of, things that are useful, but in ways that are not super obvious to us. And I think I'm still excited about the possibilities of using them in ways that are super helpful and different than normal. I'll give you an example. This is something that I intend to, I think, post on Reddit in a few days. But I have a extension to eShell where you can prefix a command with @ and then just tell it what you want to do, and it will substitute the command that you are thinking of. Like, because often I do not remember. I never remember, like, how do you find a file in a directory tree, recursing if, like, who can remember how to do that? It's like a find and there's like a dash print there somewhere.
Michael,
but
probably, but yeah.
Yes. There are some smart people who remember this, but I am not one of them. And so I think like something like this is like you just type out, find me this file, and it will substitute the correct command. I think there's a lot of little tweaks you could do. Like, if you want the AI, it could be there for you and it will help you. And if you don't want it, it's not going to get in your way. And I think this is where Emacs can really shine. It can really take advantage of LLMs, but still remain true to its kind of editing experience because it's not forcing you to use LLMs all the time. So thank you for that great question.
That's
and then the final question. Yep. This final question is, why does it matter to have a richer UI? All that's left is basically running and getting the results. I think maybe this is a response to me complaining about Emacs not having a richer UI before, but I think it does matter a lot for all sorts of things. It's hard to kind of explain succinctly because I'm talking about UI and I'd have to show you things. But it should be just something like, oh, I have an error and I'm using FlyMake, and I'm using I have options where it'll show me the error inline by like underlining things and having a little message. But like, oh, you know what? That message doesn't appear quite right a lot of the times. Or here's another one. Like I program in Python a lot. And Python, it's super hard to program in unless you have these little vertical lines that shows you what the indents are. At least I find it. There are 2 packages that do that. None of them do it particularly well, just because Emacs at its base does not allow you to do this. And so you kind of have to hack it in. And there's lots of ways to mess it up. And when editing, you'll find yourself messing this thing up regularly. So it doesn't look quite clean. And like there's little artifacts, or there's little ways that it kind of gets things wrong, or you can get things wrong with it. So I think that like there's a lot of issues with that sort of thing, and also like what if you want to do something like play a video inline? Like, I don't know, Emacs should be able to do that. Emacs should be able to do anything, but right now it just can't. And I think a lot of the reason as well, we want it to be compatible with TRS-80 machines or something like that. And this is important. This really is important. But I hope there's some way that we can kind of eventually figure out how to get the best of both compatibility and more modern UIs. So we can have more modern UIs for people that have modern machines, and other people either do without that functionality or sort of fall back to some reasonable default. Okay.
So we have about 30 seconds or a minute. I know there's one more question. I'd love for you to get to it. I just want to make sure that while we're still live on stream, you get a chance to share any closing remarks you might have.
Thank you for that. Yes. So first of all, I want to thank everyone involved for listening. And I want to thank Corwin, thanks for moderating this. And Sasha, thank you for putting that together. And I know there's more people that are working behind the scenes. So thank you all for putting this together. I'm so happy that we all are here. We care about Emacs. We're pushing Emacs forward. We are, I think Emacs remains this really remarkable achievement. Like, it's amazing that it exists. It continues to exist. It's hard. It's like, really, there's a lot of work to go into it. So I think let's all just appreciate everyone who like contributes and makes all of this possible. Because if you ever read the Emacs Develop mailing list, it's a lot of work, a lot of deep thinking, a lot of careful thinking. And I think this is really important. So thank you, especially to the maintainers of Emacs and everyone who's contributing to the core experience, all the libraries, all the LM stuff we mentioned before. Like, you're all doing such a fantastic job. It's exciting to be here.
Thank you for your talk, Andrew. It's been just fascinating. If you don't mind, I'd love to jump right over to the last question.
Okay, let's do that. It says, I have 45 plus years editing, programming. I'm not sure I can think about things without thinking of buffers, editors, etc. Is this a handicap? Should we have people with no experience with code learning to prompt?
Next, we have Emacs and Private AI, a great match, by Aaron Grothe. He'll answer questions via web conference. You can join using the URL from the talk page or ask questions through Etherpad or IRC.
Hey everybody, welcome from frigid Omaha, Nebraska. Just going to kick off my talk here and we'll see how it all goes. Thanks for attending. So the slides will be available on my site, growthy.us, in the presentation section tonight or tomorrow. This is a quick intro to one way to do private AI in Emacs. There are a lot of other ways to do it. This one is really just more or less the easiest way to do it. It's a minimal viable product to get you an idea of how to get started with it and how to give it a spin. Really hope some of you give it a shot and learn something along the way. So the overview of the talk, it's broken down to these basic bullet points. Why private AI? What do I need to do private AI? Emacs and private AI, pieces for an AI Emacs solution, a demo of a minimal viable product, and the summary. Why private AI? This is pretty simple. Just read the terms and conditions for any AI system you're currently using. If you're using the free tiers, your queries, code uploaded, information is being used to train the models. In some cases, you're giving the company a perpetual license to your data. You have no control over this except for not using the engine. And keep in mind, the terms are changing all the time on that, and they're not normally changing for our benefits. So that's not necessarily a good thing. If you're using the paid tiers, you may be able to opt out of the data collection, but keep in mind this can change, or they may start charging for that option. Every AI company wants more and more data. They need more and more data to train their models. It is just the way it is. They need more and more information to get it more and more accurate to keep it up to date. There's been a story about Stack Overflow that has like half the number of queries they had a year ago because people are using AI. The problem with that is now there's less data going to Stack Overflow for the AI to get. So it's a vicious cycle, especially when you start looking at newer languages like Ruby and stuff like that. So it comes down to being an interesting time. Another reason why to go private AI is your costs are going to vary. Right now, these services are being heavily subsidized. If you're paying Claude $20 a month, it is not costing Claude, those guys $20 a month to host all the infrastructure, to build all these data centers. They are severely subsidizing that at a very much a loss right now. When they start charging the real costs plus a profit, it's going to change. Right now, I use a bunch of different services. I've played with Grok and a bunch of other ones, but Grok right now is like $30 a month for regular super Grok. When they start charging the real cost of that, it's going to go from $30 to something a great deal more. Perhaps think $100 or $200 or whatever it really turns out to be the cost when you figure everything into it. When you start adding that cost into that, a lot of people are using public AI right now are going to have no option but to move to private AI or give up on AI overall. What do you need to be able to do private AI? If you're going to run your own AI, you're going to need a system with either some cores, a graphics processor unit, or a neural processing unit, a GPU or an NPU. I currently have 4 systems I'm experimenting with and playing around with on a daily basis. I have a System 76 Pangolin, AMD Ryzen 7 7840U with a Radeon 7080M integrated graphics card. It's got 32 gigs of RAM. It's a beautiful piece of hardware. I really do like it. I have my main workstation, which is an HP Z620 with dual Intel Xeons with 4 NVIDIA K2200 graphics cards in it. Why the 4 NVIDIA K2200 graphics card on it? Because I could buy 4 of them on eBay for $100, and it was still supported by the NVIDIA drivers for Debian. So that's why that is. A MacBook Air with an M1 processor, a very nice piece of kit I picked up a couple years ago, very cheap, but it runs AI surprisingly well. And an Acer Aspire 1 with an AMD Ryzen 5700H in it. This was my old laptop. It was a sturdy beast. It was able to do enough AI to do demos and stuff, and I liked it quite a bit for that. I'm using the Pangolin for this demonstration because it's just better. Apple's M4 chip has 38 teraflops of NPU performance. The Microsoft Copilots are now requiring 45 teraflops of NPU to be able to have the Copilot badge on it. And Raspberry Pi's new AI top is about 18 teraflops and is $70 on top of the cost of Raspberry Pi 5. Keep in mind, Raspberry Pi Raspberry recently raised the cost of their Pi 5s because of RAM pricing, which is going to be affecting a lot of these types of solutions in the near future. But there's going to be a lot of local power available in the future. That's what it really comes down to. A lot of people are going to have PCs on their desk. They're going to be able to run a decent private AI without much issue. So for Emacs and private AI, there's a couple popular solutions. GPTel, which is the one we're going to talk about. It's a simple interface. It's a minimal interface. It integrates easily into your workflow. It's just, quite honestly, chef's kiss, just a beautifully well done piece of software. Ollama Buddy has more features, a menu interface, has quick access for things like code refactoring, text reformatting, etc. This is the one that you spend a little more time with, but you also get a little bit more back from it. Llama is another one, has some really good features to it, different capabilities, but it's a different set of rules and capabilities to it. IterMac, which is paragramming with your AI in Emacs. The closest thing I can come up to comparing this to is Cursor, except it's in Emacs. It's really quite well done. These are all really quite well done. There's a bunch of other projects out there. If you go out to GitHub, type Emacs AI, you'll find a lot of different options. So what is a minimal viable product that can be done? A minimal viable product to show what an AI Emacs solution is can be done with only needing 2 pieces of software. Llama file. This is an amazing piece of software. This is a whole LLM contained in one file, and the same file runs on Mac OS X, Linux, Windows, and the BSDs. It's a wonderful piece of kit based on these people who created this thing called Cosmopolitan that lets you create an executable that runs on a bunch of different systems. And GPTel, which is an easy plugin for Emacs, which we talked about in the last slide of it. So setting up the LLM, you have to just go out and just hit the page for it and go out and do a wget of it. That's all it takes there. Chmodding it so you can actually execute the executable, and then just go ahead and actually running it. And let's go ahead and do that. I've already downloaded it because I don't want to wait. And let's just take a look at it. I've actually downloaded several of them, but let's go ahead and just run Llama 3.2b with the 3 billion instructions. And that's it firing up. And it is nice enough to actually be listening in port 8080, which we'll need in a minute. So once you do that, you have to install GPTel into Emacs. That's as simple as firing up Emacs, doing the meta-x install package, and then just typing GPTel if you have your repository set up right, which hopefully you do. And then you just go ahead and have it. You also have to set up a config file. Here's my example config file as it currently set up, requiring ensuring GPTel is loaded, defining the Llama file backend. You can put multiple backends into it, but I just have the one defined on this example. But it's pretty straightforward. Llama local file, name for it, stream, protocol HTTP. If you have HTTPS set up, that's obviously preferable, but a lot of people don't for their home labs. Host is just 127.0.0.1, port 8080. Keep in mind, some of the AIs run on a different port, so you may be 8081 if you're running Open Web UI at the same time. The key, we don't need an API key because it's a local server. And the models, just we can put multiple models on there if we want to. So if we create one with additional stuff or like RAG and stuff like that, we can actually name those models by their domain, which is really kind of cool. But that's all that takes. So let's go ahead and go to a quick test of it. And, oops, Alt-X, GPTel. And we're going to just choose the default buffer to make things easier. Going to resize it up a bit. And usually the go-to question I go to is, who was David Bowie? This one is actually a question that's turned out to be really good for figuring out whether or not AI is complete. This is one that some engines do well on, other ones don't. And we can either do the Alt-X and send the GPTel send, or we can just do Control-C and hit enter. We'll just do Control-C and enter. And now it's going ahead and hitting our local AI system running on port 8080. And that looks pretty good. But let's go ahead and say, hey, it's set to terse mode right now. Please expand upon this. And there we go. We're getting a full description of the majority of about David Bowie's life and other information about him. So very, very happy with that. One thing to keep in mind is you look at things when you're looking for hallucinations, how accurate AI is, how it's compressed, is it will tend to screw up on things like how many children he had and stuff like that. Let me see if it gets to that real quick. Did not actually go into that in this one. All right, so that's the first question I always ask one. The next one is, what are sea monkeys? It gives you an idea of the breadth of the system. It's querying right now. Pulls it back correctly. And it's smart enough to actually detect David Bowie even referenced Sea Monkeys in his song Sea of Love, which came a hit single. So it's actually keeping the context alive, and which is a very cool feature. I did not see that coming. Here's one that some people say is a really good one to ask. R's in strawberry. All right, now she's going off the reservation. She's just going in a different direction. Let me go ahead and reopen that again because I went down a bad hole there for a second. Let me ask it to do, write hello world in Emacs Lisp. Yep, that works. So the point being here, that was like 2 minutes of setup, and now we have a small AI embedded inside the system. So that gives you an idea just how easy it can be, and it's just running locally on the system. We also have the default system here as well, so not that bad. So that's a basic solution. That's a basic setup that will get you to the point where you can go like, it's a party trick, but it's a very cool party trick. And the way that GPTel works is it puts it into buffers. It doesn't interfere with your flow that much. It's just an additional window you can pop open to ask questions and get information for, dump code into it and have it refactored. GPTel has a lot of additional options for things that are really kind of cool for that. But if you want a better solution, I recommend Ollama or LM Studio. They're both more capable in Llama file. They can accept a lot of different models. You can do things like RAG. You can do loading of things onto the GPU more explicitly. It can speed stuff up. One of the things about the retrieval augmentation is it will let you put your data into the system so you can start uploading your code, your information, and actually being able to do analysis of it. OpenWebUI provides more capabilities. It provides an interface that's similar to what you're used to seeing for ChatGPT and the other systems. It's really quite well done. And once again, GPTel, I have to mention that because that's the one I really kind of like. And Ollama Buddy is also another really nice one. So what about the licensing of these models? Since I'm going out, pulling down a model and doing this stuff. Let's take a look at a couple of highlights from the MetaLlama 3 community license. A scale, if your service exceeds 700 million monthly users, you need additional licensing. Probably not going to be a problem for most of us. There's a competition restriction. You can't use this model to enhance competing models. And there's some limitations on using the meta trademarks. Not that big a deal. And the other ones are, it's a permissive one. It's designed to encourage innovation, open development. Commercial use is allowed, but there are some restrictions on it. Yeah, you can modify the model, but you have to rely on the license terms. And you can distribute the model with derivatives. And there are some very cool ones out there. There's people who've done things to try and make the llama be less, what's the phrase, ethical if you're doing penetration testing research and stuff like that. It has some very nice value there. Keep in mind, the license is also vary depending on the model you're using. Mistral AI has the non-production license. It's designed to keep it to research and development. You can't use it commercially. So it's designed for it's designed to clearly delineate between research and development and somebody trying to actually build something on top of it. And another question I get asked is, are there open source data model options? Yeah, but most of them are small or specialized currently. Molmo is a whole family of them, but they tend to be more specialized, but it's very cool to see where it's going. And it's another thing that's just going forward. It's under the MIT license. Some things to know to help you have a better experience with this. Get Llama and Open Web UI working by themselves, then set up your config file. I was fighting both at the same time, and it turned out I had a problem with my old Llama. I had a conflict, so that was what my problem is. Llama file, GPTel is a great way to start experimenting just to get you an idea how it works and figure out how the interfaces work. Tremendous. RAG, loading documents into it, is really easy with Open Web UI. You can create models. You can put things like help desk developers and stuff like that, breaking it out. The Hacker News has a how to build a $300 AI computer. This is from March 2024, but it still has a lot of great information on how to benchmark the environments, what some values are, like the Ryzen 5700U inside my Acer Aspire. That's where I got the idea of doing that. How to make sure you do the ROC M stuff correctly to get the GUI extensions. So, but it's just really good stuff. You don't need a great GPU or CPU to get started. Smaller models like Tiny Llama can run on very small systems. So it gets you the ability to start playing with it and start experimenting and figure out if that's for you and to move forward with it. The AMD Ryzen AI Max 395 Plus is in a mini PC, makes a really nice dedicated AI host. You used to be able to buy these for about $1,200. Now with the RAM price increase, you want to get 128 gig when you're pushing $2,000. So it gets a little tighter. Macs work remarkably well with the AI. My MacBook Air was one of my go-tos for a while, but once I started doing anything AI, I had a 5-minute window before the thermal throttling became an issue. Keep in mind that's a MacBook Air, so it doesn't have the greatest ventilation. If you get the MacBook Pros and stuff, they tend to have more ventilation, but still you're going to be pushing against that. So Mac Minis and the Mac Ultras and stuff like that tend to work really well for that. Alex Ziskind on YouTube has a channel. He does a lot of AI performance benchmarking, like I load a 70 billion parameter model on this mini PC and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun and interesting stuff there. And it's influencing my decision to buy my next AI style PC. Small domain-specific LMs are happening. An LM that has all your code and information, it sounds like a really cool idea. It gives you capabilities to start training stuff that you couldn't do with like the big ones. Even with in terms of fine-tuning and stuff. It's remarkable to see where that space is coming along in the next year or so. Hugging Face Co. has pointers to tons of AI models. You'll find the one that works for you, hopefully there. If you're doing cybersecurity, there's a whole bunch out there for that have certain training on it, information. It's really good. One last thing to keep in mind is hallucinations are real. You will get BS back from the AI occasionally, so do validate everything you get from it. Don't be using it for court cases like some people have and run into those problems. So that is my talk. What I would like you to get out of that is if you haven't tried it, give GPTel and Llama File a shot. Fire up a little small AI instance inside, play around with a little bit inside your Emacs and see if it makes your life better. Hopefully it will. And I really hope you guys learned something from this talk. And thanks for listening. And the links are at the end of the talk if you have any questions. Let me see if we got anything on Wattpad.
You do. You got a few questions. Hey, this is Corwin. Thank you so much.
Hey, Corwin.
Thank you, Aaron. What an awesome talk this was. Actually, you don't have a camera, I can get away with not having one too.
I'll turn the camera on.
Okay. All right. I'll turn mine back on. Here I come.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so there are a few questions, but first let me say thank you for a really captivating talk. I think a lot of people will be empowered from this to try to do more with less, especially locally. And coming to some of the questions we've heard in other talks, people concerned about the data center footprint, environmentally concerned about the footprint of LLM inside data centers. So just thinking about how we can put infrastructure we have at home to use and get more done with less.
Yeah, the data center impact's interesting because there was a study a while ago. Someone said every time you do a Gemini query, it's like boiling a cup of water.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. So do you want to, I don't know how much direction you want. I'd be very happy to read out the questions for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm having trouble getting to that tab.
Okay, I'm there. So I'll put it into our chat too, so you can follow along if you'd like. But just the first question was, why is the David Bowie question a good one to start with? Does it have interesting failure conditions, or what made you choose that?
First off, huge fan of David Bowie. That's not how it always starts. But who isn't really? But I came down to it. It really taught me a few things about how the models work in terms of things like how many kids he had, because DeepSeek, which is a very popular Chinese model that a lot of people are using now, misidentifies him as having 3 daughters, and he has like one son and one, I think 2 sons and a daughter, something like that. And so there's differences on that, and it just goes over. There's a whole lot of stuff because his story spans like 60 years, so it gives him good feedback. And that's the real main reason I asked that question, because I just needed one that Sea Monkeys I just picked because it was obscure. And just always have it right. I used to have it write "Hello World" in 4th because I thought it was an interesting one as well. So it's just picking random ones like that. One question to ask, a lot of models is, what is the closest star to the Earth? Because most of them will say Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri and not the Sun. And I have a whole nother talk where I just argue with the LLM trying to say, hey, the Sun is a star, and it just wouldn't accept it. So. What?
So
okay.
You're there.
Yeah.
So what specific tasks do you like to use your local AI for?
I like to load a lot of my code into and actually have it do analysis of it. I was actually going through some code I have for some pen testing, and I was having it modify it to update it for the newer version, because I hate to say this, but it was written for Python 2, and I needed to update it for Python 3. And the 2 to 3 tool did not do all of it, but the actual tool was able to do the refactoring. It's part of my laziness. But I use that for anything I don't want to hit the web, and that's a lot of stuff. When you start thinking about if you're doing cybersecurity researching and you have your white papers and stuff like that and stuff in there. So I've got a lot of that loaded into RAG and one model on my Open LLMs, on my Open Web UI system.
Neat. Have you used any small domain specific LLMs? What kind of tasks if so, what kind of tasks that they specialize in, and how?
I have not, to be honest, but there are some out there, like once again for cybersecurity and stuff like that, that I really need to dig into. That's on my to-do list. I've got a couple weeks off at the end of the year, and that's a big part of my plan for that.
Are the various models updated pretty regularly? Can you add your own data to the pre-built models?
Yes, you can. The models are updated pretty reasonably. You can add data to a model in a couple different ways. You can do something called fine-tuning, which requires a really nice GPU and a lot of CPU time. Probably not going to do that. You can do retrieval augmentation generation, which is you load your data on top of the system and puts inside a database, and it can actually scan that and stuff. I have another talk where I go through and I start asking questions about, I load the talk into the engine, and then I ask questions against that. Oh, cool. If I would have had a little more time, I would have done that. But it comes down to how many, that's RAG. RAG is pretty easy to do through Open Web UI or LM Studio. It's a great way. You just like point it to a folder, and it just sucks all that data into it, and it'll hit that data first. If you have like help desk and stuff. And the other options, there's vector databases, which is like if you use PostgreSQL, it has the PG vector. It can do a lot of that stuff. I've not dug into that yet, but that is also on that to-do list. I've got a lot of stuff planned for the end of the year.
Cool. So what are your experience with RAGs. I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means?
Sorry, sorry, what was the question again?
What is your experience with RAGs or RAGs?
RAGs is great. That's retrieval augmentation generation. That loads your data first and it hits yours, and it'll actually cite it and stuff. There's a guy who wrote a RAG in 100 lines of Python, and it's an impressive piece of software. I think if you hit one of my site, I've got a private AI talk where I actually refer to that. But retrieval augmentation, it's easy, it's fast, it puts your data into the system. Yeah, start with that, then iterate on top of that. That's one of the great things about AI, especially private AI, is you can do whatever you want to with it and build up with it as you get more experience.
What any thoughts on running things on AWS, DigitalOcean, and so on?
AWS is not bad. The DigitalOcean, they have some of their GPUs. I still don't like having the data leave my house, to be honest, or at work, because I tend to do some stuff that I don't want even hitting that situation. But they have pretty good stuff. Another one to consider is Oracle Cloud. Oracle has their AI infrastructure that's really well done. But I mean, once again, then you start looking at potential. It's saying your data is private, but I don't necessarily trust it. But they do have good stuff. Both DigitalOcean, AWS, Oracle Cloud has the free service, which isn't too bad, usually a certain number of stuff. And Google's also has it. But I still tend to keep more stuff on local PCs because I just paranoid that way.
Gotcha. What has your experience been using AI? Do you want to get into that, using AI for cybersecurity? You might have already touched on this. Really
for cybersecurity, what I've had it do is I've dumped logs to it and have it do correlation. Keep in mind, the size of that llama file we were using for figuring out David Bowie, writing the hello world and all that stuff is like 6 gig. How does it get the entire world in 6 gig? I still haven't figured that out in terms of quantization. So I'm really interested in seeing the ability to take like all the stuff out of my all my logs, dump it all in there, and actually be able to do intelligent queries against that. Microsoft has a project called Security Copilot, which is trying to do that in the cloud. But I want to work on something to do that more locally and be able to actually drive this stuff over that. That's one also on the long-term goals. So we got any other questions or?
Those are the questions that I see. I want to just read out a couple of comments that I saw in IRC, though. Jay Rutabaga says it went very well from an audience perspective. And G Gundam says, respect your commitment to privacy. And then somebody's telling us we might have skipped a question. So I'm just going to run back to my list. Updated regularly, experience with I just didn't type in the answer. There's a couple more questions coming in. Okay. So, is there a disparity where you go to paid models because they are better, and what problems, what would drive you toward that?
That's a good question. Paid models, I don't mind them. I think they're good, but I don't think they're actually economically sustainable under their current system. Because right now, if you're paying $20 a month for Copilot and that goes to $200, I'm not going to be as likely to use it, if you know what I mean. But it does do some things in a way that I did not expect. For example, Grok was refactoring some of my code. In the comments, it dropped an F-bomb, which I did not see coming. But the other code before that I had gotten off GitHub had F-bombs in it, so it was just emulating the style. But would that be something I'd want to turn into a pull request? I don't know. But there's a lot of money going into these AIs and stuff, but in terms of the ability to get a decent one like the Llama 3.2 and load your data into it, you can be pretty competitive. You're not going to get all the benefits, but you have more control over it. So it's a this and that. It's a balancing act.
Okay, and I think I see a couple more questions coming in. What is the largest parameter size for local models that you've been able to successfully run locally? And do you run into issues with limited context window size? The top paid models will tend to have a larger ceiling.
Yes. By default, the context size is, I think, 1024, but I've upped it to 8192 on this box, the Pangolin, because it seems to be some reason it's just a very working quite well. But the largest ones I've loaded have been in the have not been that huge. I've loaded this God, I can't remember the last biggest one I've done. That's the reason why I'm planning on breaking down and buying a Ryzen AI. Actually, I'm going to buy an Ultra Intel i285H with 96 gig of RAM, and then I should be able to load a 70 billion parameter model in that. How fast will it run? It's going to run slow as dog, but it's going to be cool to be able to do it. It's a AI bragging rights thing, but I mostly stick with the smaller size models and the ones that are more quantized because it just tends to work better for me. So it varies on your hardware.
We've still got over 10 minutes before we're cutting away, but I'm just anticipating that we're going to be going strong at the 10-minute mark. So I'm just letting you know we can go as long as we like here. At a certain point, I may have to jump away and check in with the next speaker, but we'll post the entirety of this, even if we aren't able to stay within the whole line.
Okay.
And we've got 10 minutes where we're still gonna stay live. So next question coming in, I see, are there free as in freedom, free as in FSF, issues with the data?
Yes. Where is the data coming from is a huge question with AI. It's astonishing. You can ask questions to models that you don't know where it's coming from. That is going to be one of the big issues long term. There are people who are working on trying to figure out that stuff, but it's I mean, if you look at God, I can't remember who it was. Somebody was actually out torrenting books just to be able to build into their AI system. I think it might have been Meta. So there's a lot of that going on. The open sourceness of the stuff is going to be tough. There's some models like the Momolos guys have got their own license, but where they're getting their data from, I'm not sure on. So that's a huge question. That's a talk in itself. But yeah, but if you train it on your RAG and your data, and you know what it's coming, you know you have a license to that. But the other stuff is just more along the lines of a supplement if you're using a smaller model. But
the comment online, I see a couple of them. I'll read them out in order here. Really interesting stuff. Thank you for your talk. Given that large AI companies are openly stealing intellectual property and copyright and therefore eroding the authority of such laws and maybe obscuring the truth itself, can you see a future where IP and copyright law become untenable? I think
that's a great question. I'm not a lawyer. Let's start with that. But it is really getting complicated. It is getting to the point. I asked a question from, I played with Sora a little bit, and it generated someone, you can go like, oh, that's John Hamm, that's Christopher Walken. You start figuring out who the people they're modeling stuff after. There is an apocalypse, something going to happen. Right now, there is, this is once again my personal opinion, and I am not a lawyer and I do not have money, so don't sue me, the current administration is very pro AI, and there's a great deal of lobbying by those groups, and it's on both sides. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to copyright in the next 5-10 years. I just don't know how it keeps up without there being some adjustments and stuff.
Okay, and then another comment I saw, file size is not going to be a bottleneck. RAM is. You'll need 16 gigabytes of RAM to run the smallest local models and 512 gigabytes of RAM to run the larger ones. You'll need a GPU with that much memory if you want it to run quickly.
Yeah. Oh, no. It also depends on how your memory is laid out. Like example being the Ultra i285H I plan to buy. That has 96 gig of memory. It's unified between the GPU and the CPU share it, but they go over the same bus. So the overall bandwidth of it tends to be a bit less, but you're able to load more of it into memory, so it's able to do some additional stuff with it as opposed to coming off disk. It's all a balancing act. If you hit Ziskin's website, that guy's done some great work on it. I'm trying to figure out how big a model you can do, what you can do with it. And some of the stuff seems to be not obvious because, like, example being that MacBook Air, for the 5 minutes I can run the model, it runs it faster than a lot of other things that should be able to run it faster, just because the way the ARM cores and the unified memory work on it. So it's a learning process. But if you want to, Network Chuck had a great article, a great video talking about building his own system with a couple really powerful NVIDIA cards and stuff like that in it, and just actually setting up on his system as a node and using a web UI on it. So there's a lot of stuff there, but it is a process of learning how big your data is, which models you want to use, how much information you need, but it's part of the learning. And you can run models even as on Raspberry Pi 5s if you want to. They'll run slow, don't get me wrong, but they're possible.
Okay, and I think there's other questions coming in too, so I'll just vamp for another second. We've got about 5 minutes before we'll be cutting over, but I just want to say, in case we get squoze for time here, how much I appreciate your talk. This is another one that I'm going to have to study after the conference.
We greatly appreciate, all of us appreciate you guys putting on the conference. It's a great conference. It's well done.
It's an honor to be on the stage with you, with the brains of the project, which is you.
So what else we got question-wise?
Okay, so just scanning it here. Have you used local models capable of tool calling?
I'm scared of agentic. I am. I'm going to be a slow adopter of that. I want to do it, but I just don't have the intestinal fortitude right now to do it. I've had it give me the commands, but I still run the commands by hand. I'm looking into it, and it's on, once again, it's on that list, but that's a big step for me. So.
Awesome. Right. Well, maybe it's let me just scroll through because we might have missed one question. Oh, I see. Here was the piggyback question. Now I see the question that I missed. So this was piggybacking on the question about model updates and adding data. And will models reach out to the web if they need more info, or have you worked with any models that work that way?
No, I have not seen any models that do that. There was like a group working on something like a package updater that would do different diffs on it, but it's so models change so much. Even if you make minor changes and fine tuning, it's hard to just update them in place. So I haven't seen one, but that doesn't mean they're not out there. I'm curious topic though.
Awesome. Well, it's probably pretty good timing. Let me just scroll and make sure now there. And of course, before I can say that, there's one more question. So let's go ahead and have at it. I want to make sure while we're still live, though, I give you a chance to offer any closing thoughts. So what scares you most about the agentic tools? How would you think about putting a sandbox around that if you did adopt an agentic workflow?
That is a great question. In terms of that, I would just control what it's able to talk to, what machines. I would actually have it be air-gapped. I work for a defense contractor, and we spend a lot of time dealing with air-gapped systems because that's just kind of the way it works out for us. So agentic, it's just going to take a while to get trust. I want to see more stuff happening. Humans screw up stuff enough. The last thing we need is to multiply that by 1,000. So in terms of that, I would be restricting what it can do. If you look at the capabilities, if I created a user and I gave it permissions, I would have it locked down through sudo what it's able to do, what the account's able to do. I would do those kind of things, but it's happening. It's just I'm going to be one of the laggards on that one.
So air gap, jail, extremely locked down environments. Like we're talking about separate physicals, not Docker, right?
Yeah,
makes sense.
Hopefully,
right. Fair. So tool calling can be read-only, such as giving models the ability to search the web before answering your question. Write access, execute access. I'm interested to know if local models are any good at that kind of thing.
Yes, local models can do a lot of that stuff. It's their capabilities. If you load LM Studio, you can do a lot of wonderful stuff with that, or with Open Web UI with Olama. It's a lot of capabilities. It's amazing. Open Web UI is actually what a lot of companies are using now to put their data behind that, their curated data and stuff like that. So it works well.
Confirm that from my own professional experience.
Excellent.
Okay, well, our timing should be just perfect. If you want to give us like a 30-second, 45-second wrap up, Aaron, let me squeeze in mine. Thank you again so much for preparing this talk and for entertaining all of our questions.
Let me just thank you guys for the conference again. This is a great one. I've enjoyed a lot of it. I've only hit a couple of the talks so far, but I'm looking forward to hitting the ones after this and tomorrow. But the AI stuff is coming. Get on board. Definitely recommend if you want to just try it out, get a little taste of it. what my minimal viable product with just llama file and GPTel will get you to the point where you start figuring out GPTel is an amazing thing. It just gets out of your way, but it works so well with the Emacs design because it doesn't take your hands off the keyboard. It's just another buffer, and you just put information in there. It's quite.
Next, we have common Lisp images communicating like a human through shared Emacs Slime and EEV by ScrewLisp. He will answer questions via IRC in the EmacsConf dev channel.
Hey everyone. This talk is on Lisp tradition intelligent agents in Emacs using my Leonardo software individuals, which I've mistyped as I just wrote here, I see. Thank you to Sasha and everyone at EmacsConf and Emacs, I guess. Sorry that I was running late. I'm screwlisp.small-web.org. I run those 1 or 2 weekly shows for a long time, the Lispy Gopher Climate. I'm active on the Mastodon at screwlisp at gamerplus.org. I'm screwtape on lambda.mu.mud.org. And I ported, over the last kind of years to some extent, I ported Eric Sandwell's kind of system for developing intelligent software agents, which he finished working on in 2014. I got it working again around 2025 quite well. And we're kind of going to see that. But first, we're going to take a long arc. And we're kind of going to motivate this is the idea. You can see I'm using org mode, which I hope provides a good example for all the org mode oriented talks this conference. But you can also see that I'm using Eduardo Ox's EEV minor mode with org. But we can see a little bit of the difference between these two, and that will kind of evolve into my style with the agent communication in Emacs. So you can see I used EEV anchors as my Emacs headings. And so in EEV, you just evaluate eLisp expressions as sort of links to places, and an anchor will link you somewhere else in the document. So my table of contents links to my talk, I guess. And anchors kind of come in 2 halves, so that's why I built that that unique table of contents experience there. What else am I going to say? So first, let's just do some totally normal computing, because intelligence is going to be difficult to describe. So let's just try and compute normally in Emacs in org mode, and then segue more so into EEV. And then maybe I would like, if an agent was intelligent, I would think that an intelligent agent would do something like what I'm doing. It should be recognizably similar to what I do myself. I don't think the word intelligence is relevant if it's if it's not related to something I'm not familiar with. Using Emacs as a human, reading headings from my article. Using Common Lisp. Right, my friend Jeremy_List wrote actually a big project, but part of it was base 64 encoding, and I just yoinked his C code for base 64 encoding, I think. So this is just clearly some C base 64 encoding. If you go to my blog, his project is actually a C++ project, and you can see me doing this with C++ rather than C. But basically you can go to my blog articles if you want more detail to read something maybe instead. And then here's some embeddable Common Lisp, Jack Daniels, ECL, ANSI Common Lisp compiler, I guess. This is just what it looks like. You can see I'm using org mode, trickily, using no web to put the lines of the C source block. In this one, we're tangling it to this file rather than evaluating it. So, literate programming, tangle and weave. We're just using org mode like the other org mode people are all showing us this conference, I guess. Then we have to compile it. It's always hard to remember these invocations for me. Results file. The file is my FAS file. because the way ECL's C and C++ integration works is that it just has to be seen by the by compile file in Lisp. I cached this earlier. Oh, I should actually start Lisp, actually, shouldn't I? How are we going to do this? setq inferior Lisp program ECL. We could slime. Because we better actually load this. I kind of did a dry run before. I think we can just load this because I already did it. But I cached it. Let's nuke the cache. Okay, I'm going to say that that probably worked. Now, as you saw, that base 64 encoding was just, I guess, number to character code to other character code. So I wrote this higher level Lisp one, but it's not really the point. Obviously, Emacs also has base 64 encoding. It's just a point that we might have C++ and C external programs that we'd like to be integrating into our Emacs agents capabilities. Here we can see a normal named org mode source block that calls that function, then an org mode source block that calls Emacs's base 64 decode as a way of validating it, I guess. Go to org, so we can see I have a named call to that function calling the Lisp function. You know, org is just kind of like this. It's cached, but I don't seem to have run it before. Then I do the Emacs decode. So if we just run this using Control-C, Control-C, and we can kind of see what org mode is like a little bit here. All right. Yes, so as we can see, oh, hang on, let's run this as well, actually. Yep, so the C embeddable common Lisp base 64 encoding gets us this, and then Emacs is decoding and gets us back, kind of validates it. I think I'm missing some things, like I don't pad characters out to the correct byte lengths, that kind of thing, but it's fine. And then I kind of contrast that to, I really like what my friend mdhughes.tech calls, game dev of the ages, calls REPL-driven development, which he says is kind of the opposite of literate coding. And I think EEV is a little bit, at least for me, is kind of like REPL-driven development. So in EEV, if you just press F8, the thing happens. And if it's a red star line, the thing is an Emacs Lisp thing, and otherwise it goes to the EE pitch target. So if I do this, great, now I'm pitching to that slime REPL ECL I made. And then I pressed F8, pressed F8 again, the string got coerced to a list, F8, now it's car codified. This, I quite like this, because this looks like something I can do and understand doing and reason about doing. And I kind of form a command to send from Lisp to Emacs. Then I do it, and I recover the string from the beginning. I guess I had one of these here. Oh, by the way, look at what org mode did with an EEV source block. And then when I close the source block using Control-C apostrophe, it brings me back to the org doc, which was a cool synergy between the EEV minor mode, and EEV source blocks in org mode that I noticed. And so I kind of want my agents to be like this EEV usage. Clearly, org is super powerful, but I don't even like writing calls like this, where you write the function that will happen last first, and then so you're kind of writing right to left, first to last. Whereas in REPL-driven development, I guess I'm writing top to bottom, and EEV kind of, I guess, executable logs are logs that are like that. So I kind of like EEV's view for reasoning more than org's Tangle. Obviously, Tangle is trying to do tricky things, but maybe they have different specializations, and EEV's one is more close to my own version of intelligence, maybe. Software individuals using EEV in Emacs like a human. Yeah, you can always visit my blog posts for more detail. Right, I made a CLOS object in Common Lisp to wrap doing this. It's not really the topic. It's in the appendix somewhere if you need it. So I've just executed that. You can look at the appendix in your own time. Jumping over to actually starting our hypothetical intelligent agent. Kind of, I guess we're doing EEV here. So if we open this, press F8 a bunch of times. Oh, and if you were cloning it yourself, I guess that's what you would do. Set Q E pitch buffer name. Oh yeah, if you went to a E pitch shell and then came back, you would have had to do that, but I didn't, so I didn't need to. Sandoval's style is to use relative paths to tell which agent is acting inside a software individual, remembering a software individual is potentially a bunch of agents. And we load, so one individual, all the agents in each individual share a kernel. So only one agent in one software individual is active at any given time, but the agents are separate. They just all have to share the kernel resource, which is the Remus agent. Oh, I got rid of this. And start this CLE is the thing. Oh, I did need to have an EmacsConf knowledge base. Well, let's just keep E pitching for a little bit. So I think I made, I'm going to call it EmacsConf KB. All right, that looks likely. And I think that the agent, I can check this. I could have checked that. I could have done something like get EmacsConf KB contents. Yeah, and you can see there's a location inside it, which is agent1, which I assume is an entity file that I was working with before. And then what were we going to do? Oh yeah, back to the embeddable Common Lisp. Oops, embeddable Common Lisp image. So if we, I guess, press our button back to there. And so my idea is that for an Emacs agent, basically I'd like to have an Emacs list, Emacs Lisp list, and just when stuff gets into that Lisp, the agent, which is always running, but running slowly, will incrementally just do the stuff it finds in that list. Populating that list probably gets into stuff like your beliefs, desires, intents framework and those kind of well-known and well-studied algorithms. That's not the point here. I just want to have a list in Emacs that my ECL, I'm just going to run a loop in ECL, and the ECL is going to keep sending anything it finds in that Emacs Lisp list to the software agent. The agent is also in Emacs, so it would be able to populate its own list itself if it had an idea of like evaluating desires and chances to improve whatever it wants to improve and chances to avoid whatever it wants to avoid. Yeah, we talked a little bit too much. Let's just start this. Sorry that I'm manually setting up my screen. Then let's put CLisp over here. All right, we could kind of work with this, right? This loop isn't very important. It's just a common Lisp loop. I copy my friend JMBR's style of using Lisp machine style keyword arguments instead of symbols like CL loop. The compatibility thing in Emacs Lisp does. I'd never initialized that. Well, let's do that. Okay, now we have the list. And just every 30, let's turn it down to every 20 seconds. Hypothetically, it's going to put whatever it finds in there into there. And so I think, yeah, and now, great. So here I'm just going to fill it with stuff. And like this is quite interesting, I think. Or it just shows I can put a whole bunch of stuff into that list. Ideally, the agent would populate it itself with a BDI algorithm or something. But if we just put some stuff in there, we'll see that it will all get sent basically using EE pitch, using Eduardo's EE pitch internal machinery at least. And hence it meets my requirement that it works exactly like I work. And then in EV, I just have to press Alt-E, don't I? It works via Emacs server, and I didn't start that. So if we server start, hopefully. And then ideally, things will just begin happening in this slime REPL CLisp agent. Oh, if this was still running. Okay, well, we got at least one, but hypothetically lots of these will happen. So show agent, I guess, happened over here. I put a whole bunch of sleep fors in because I thought that going slowly would make it seem more human. I guess like I saw in Eduardo's talk last year, which is where I learned about EEV. The system is a little fragile. Oh, okay, you see. Yeah, because hypothetically we have a whole bunch of agents. And so I guess every time it gets sent, it checks that we're in the right agent. And it's not actually just sending a string, it's sending a sequence of string actions over there. And so we see Emacs Lisp hypothetically put, I guess it put this foobar baz into an entity, message1, which should be of type message, I guess, conceivably. I forget if I set that up earlier. It's in the appendix somewhere. And then it just did a sequence of actions, which was really just one action of showing that. And then I called base64 encode on message1, which I believe will have set message1 encoded. Can I check that manually while it's happening? Oh, disaster. Well, that's what it should have been. Oh, well, I did mention it was a little bit fragile. What if we put can we kind of rescue this? I don't want to try redoing this. It's slightly fragile. What it would do, we can see the actions are kind of getting there, but somehow my message didn't end up getting encoded by that sequence of actions. So this decode will have also made the decoded one be null. Let's just do it manually. Should have worked. B64 encode, which calls out to Emacs to get everything actually done. I got interrupted by the agent. Well, if I do it manually, it worked. Hypothetically, the queue thing should have worked. Great. Well, it was. You can see it's kind of working. Could be more robust. The reason is that I think what I did is a bit fragile, but the intent is that FIPA, Foundation for Intelligent Physical Agents standard, SL standard, kind of has tools for reliability through repetition and checking outcomes and that kind of thing. And so I would use those. So I'm not putting too much work into being ultra reliable right now, but it kind of worked. We saw, I guess, at least Embeddable Common Lisp believed it used Emacs client externally, asynchronously, to send these to Emacs. Within Emacs, I put a whole bunch of sleeps into its thing to make it look slow and human-like. Kind of happened because Emacs's model is that it's kind of single-threaded. And can I just... I bet if we run this again, it'll at least look like it's succeeding because I fixed the base64 encoding and so forth in the background. I wonder if it will. in the meantime, let's wrap up this talk to some extent. Then I'm just kind of saying what I'm expecting to happen. I took out next action. Originally, I was keeping the list inside of the agent. Then I decided to keep the list inside Emacs because I have kind of first class. Emacs is my IDE, so I have better access to what's going on in my IDE. Then I wanted to talk about intelligence a little bit in whatever my remaining time is. Just have these great bullet points of Nosredna Idudge and Eric Sandoval. So Nosredna Idudge, when she was on the show quite a long time ago, she asked what I mean. I keep describing things as expert systems, and she wanted to know what I meant when I said expert systems. And I gave her a Lisp software example, and she said she personally wrote that software in the 80s. That I was referring to, and she wanted to know how it was an expert system. What I mean when I say expert system is a system that works kind of like I do and EEV's EE pitch does. It's where we can really reason in a very human relatable way about what the inputs to the program is, and also a program should be exposed to other programs in terms of like a well-structured transfer of knowledge as inputs, and it should have a well-structured transfer of knowledge kind of outputs. I don't know why this B64 encode message wasn't working. Then we kind of faked it into working. Well, it's going to be embarrassing for me if anybody watches this. Oh yeah, so Idudge's thing, and then I was going to also build that into Eric Sandoval's one, so this is my vision of expert systems as kind of, maybe this is an important general style, this is associated with Lisp, same as the Lisp editor Emacs. So Eric Sandoval's description of intelligence was that his grandchildren were intelligent. So if we had software agents that were intelligent, this would be true if and maybe only if they were similar to his grandchildren, who were a good reference for intelligence. And the grandchildren live for a really long time. They kind of learn gradually. They don't run on GPUs for a few minutes and then get thrown out forever, something like that. And so this is the kind of vision of, I guess, the Leonardo system software individual stuff. Well, you can see we kind of faked it into at least the show get message one decoded bits were working. I'm not sure what was happening with the eLisp ones that worked interactively, but then they didn't work in my loopy thing. Oh yeah, and then so I mentioned thank you to Sasha at the start of this talk, and so Eric Sandoval's emphasis that you'd really like intelligent software agents, Leonardo system agents, to be like your grandchildren. And I was talking to somebody, maybe to Ramin Honri, who's doing the Schemax talk this year, about Sasha's writing, and a lot of Sasha's writing is about kind of her experiences of life and technology, and especially raising A star and her observations of her I guess progeny A star's experiences of life and technology. And I would say as well as being the Emacs News and EmacsConf doer that she is. Yeah, and so I think a lot of what Sasha is seen doing and concerned with are specifically what Eric Sandoval kind of identifies as the study of intelligence as such, as should apply to computing as well. So that was my kind of thought on Sasha, Eric Sandoval, and intelligence and Idudge. I have this note from Pete Spell. I didn't realize that Microsoft had announced that 2025 was going to be the year of the software agent. I only found this out in hindsight when I saw people crowing on the Mastodon about how Microsoft had basically declared that their year of the agent marketing campaign was a failure. Where basically people didn't like the same old web services, But now, while you're formally kind of accessing a web service, the kind of web service that used to be called serverless web services, this kind of thing, but you're just being gibbered at by Microsoft Copilot while you're trying to use regular services. And people turned out not to like this. And I think that, as we can see in this agent, the agent really needs to be running on its own clock and independently of you. Like if you imagine your body is getting novel, slightly speculative instructions from your brain constantly throughout your entire waking day, quite slowly. And this is what an agent sort of should be like, and it should be. And Sandoval wrote about this. Basically, computer programs aren't going to want to use human natural language with each other. There's nothing desirable about that. So you wouldn't have two kind of hypothetical Microsoft agents, which are just regular web services with a GPT model gibbering at you while you're trying to use the web service, pointed at each other. So I think we can see Microsoft kind of did the wrong thing with the word agent, allowing that agent is an overloaded term like static. Right, I'm going to stop this. I'm not going to try and fix this. Sorry, everybody. Thank you. Talk to you on the Mastodon. Hopefully see you on the show. See you at your conference talks. My blog has writing and examples of this with multi-agents, more C and C++ stuff, Lisp things. You're welcome to come on my show to be interviewed. However formally we do that. See everybody next time.
And so
Yeah, okay. Recording is started.
Here I go.
All right, you are live. In Common Lisp on Dev.
Great.
All right. Thanks. I'm this is Corwin back, and I've got Screw Lisp with me, the host of the Lispy Golfer.
I like to say it used to be show.
The Lispy Golfer show, or the Lispy Golfer Climate. And thank you so much for joining us.
Minutes.
Yeah, we've got already a whole pad full of questions, and we have a unique opportunity. If you check out the Etherpad, you'll see some instructions there to join on Lambda Moo, which Screw Lisp, I'm hoping you will talk to us a little bit about that, as well as your very cool project here.
Oh, yeah. So I main on Lambda, as Corwin is saying. And Corwin was pretending not to know the name of the show, but he has, in fact, appeared on an episode of it in January this year, I think. So he was just pretending there. I'm Screw Lisp of this. What's happening? 10 minutes or less before we started going live here, they were like, remember how you said you fixed that bug? And then I had to quickly recapitulate my whole talk. And I introduced some new bugs while that was happening. But let's go through some of these questions. So we're all hanging out in Lambda Moo. So if you MX telnet over to lambda.moo.mud.org port 8888. This is where we're talking at the moment with people like Ed Swarthout, DM and Edudge, who I gossiped about in the show, and Sasha and people were there a little bit as well. I'm just going to read some of the questions that GGXX in Lambda Moo has been relaying to me there, though I hear that there are a whole bunch of them now. So someone asks on the Etherpad, what do you mean when I say the agent is running slowly? Yeah, so if you saw in the talk, I was having the agent only attempt to act every 20 seconds. This is what I mean by the agent is acting slowly. So this is quite different to what people might expect within AI. If people are talking about like the graphics card ones where you try and crunch as fast as you can for as few seconds as you can, and then you stop. In contrast, my agent is just trying to do a simple action every 20 seconds. But if you keep going continuously at a simple action every 20 seconds without sleeping for days, it still adds up to a lot. So that was the significance of it running slowly. What else are people saying? TGXX to screw tape. Someone asked on the Etherpad, do you think that it would be too hard to add a second way to send commands from common Lisps to Emacs? No, I put 3 of them together, and I didn't talk about it because this is a kind of affected choice. Right now, you're using Emacs client for that. That is the simplest way to implement. How about using the Slime protocol? So elsewhere, I am just using the Slime protocol. So in everyone that's Slime connected, so earlier on, you saw somebody running a Swank server in Python. Normally, you run a Swank server in Common Lisp. And a Swank server is what Emacs Slime, Superior Lisp Interaction Mode for Emacs, connects to. And then Swank comes with Swank, Eval, and Emacs. So after you've been Slime connected, you can trivially send Emacs Lisp forms to Emacs using Swank, Eval, and Emacs. The reason that I chose to use Emacs Server and Emacs Client was that I was letting the Leonardo agent talk to Emacs using Swank, Eval, and Emacs, and I wanted my ECL image to be using a different notion of a server. So the ECL image, just because I chose to do it like this, is using Emacs client and Emacs server going via, I guess it's executing a program rather than using a shell. Yeah, I was letting somebody else use Slime, Eval, in Emacs. It would have been simpler if everybody just used Slime, Eval, and Emacs. I thought I was getting something out of adding Emacs server into the mix. What's somebody saying? Edudge is weirded out by doing get foo bar instead of get foo quote bar. Yeah, that was Sandwall's choice. He was trying to pitch Lisp to logic notation people, so he lets people put commas in and then ignores them in certain expressions, and he doesn't have these Lisp style quotes. Edudge is obviously from like Schlumberger and wherever else she was at in the kind of Lisp traditions. Full Spain is saying good observation. Edudge is shocked that she's being mentioned. Interestingly, Nosredna Edudge capitalizes Nosredna at the front, but she capitalizes Edudge at the back, just for clarity. You should read her Stanford page or her recipe site or anything if you're not clear on who Edudge is. Sasha, you were looking for the word eclept, I think. She eclept Edudge, I think is the English phrase that you're looking for. Edudge is saying she would not, no matter what I say, she's not going to hug my software agent like she would hug a grandchild. Eyes me warily. And Sasha is not going to, totally not training a general intelligence who requires a lot of data and also cuddles. Okay, so everybody who has children is disagreeing with me quoting Sandwall, who did have children and grandchildren, saying that he wanted machine intelligences to be like his grandchild. GGXX is saying somebody on Etherpad is asking what the Leonardo system is. Sandwall is a Lisp scientist from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s. With things like bronze statues of him in Sweden. People outside of the Swedish-speaking sphere of science are less familiar with him. I guess he famously taught Robert Strand how to program in Lisp, if that places him for you. What else did he do? Yeah, so he was on a kind of long trajectory of AI, which would now be called good old-fashioned AI. And kind of he was coming from the situation calculus, then like activity calculus kind of direction, which are extended first order logics for reasoning about change over time. And his kind of last program he contributed to the world was this. From 2005 to 2014, he worked on this Leonardo system for his master's program. He was teaching at that time at the University of Linköping in Sweden. And then he just kind of gradually faded from view while he wrote his unpublished books on reasoning and change, I guess, between 2010 and 2014. And then I just kind of noticed this eventually, and I brought that software back, and that's what this is, and that's why it kind of weirdly exists. Welcome to Khaki Guest. Magenta Guest is gone. Pink Guest is gone. Blue Guest has arrived. Great. Somebody order 6. Everybody orders sake from Emily. We're hanging out in Jay Lamott's sushi bar in Lambda, which is on the model railway on the table in the second guest bedroom in Lambda House, where we're all hanging out. No, I think GGXX is ordering people up things. You know, just teaching people about this. All right, I'm going to try looking at the Etherpad manually.
I'm sorry, I can read you. So the next question you have,
yeah, thank you.
Somebody says, I found Eduardo's blog. What is the, oh, okay, you just got through that. And then we were also, a question you answered is the other one that I see here, just about Lambda Moo, and I think you started to answer in the pad, but if you want to kind of read that out.
No, I definitely haven't written anything in the pad. Hang on, I'm going to just talk to Khaki Guest in Lambda.
Sure. So while you do that, I'll ramp a little bit and just read this question. The question was, what is Lambda Moo and how do we use it? Lambda Moo is a multi-user dungeon, and you can telnet to it. There's instructions in the pad. I'll go ahead and drop that in the Gen channel or in the Dev channel chat right now. And I see it is already in there, but down at the bottom of the discussion links feedback area, you'll see a set of detailed instructions that ScrewLisp has provided us to get in there.
I think that was actually GGXX who might have written that for us. Several changes evolved in the last 10 minutes before we went live here. But yeah, so Lambda Moo is the world's longest running virtual reality. I guess it started in the end of October in 1990 and has run continuously to today. You can get there ideally with a MUD client. Technically, it's a MUD, object oriented. This is just where I hang out some degree of the week. Edudge is the wizard. Edudge is also the wizard Nosredna of Lambda Moo, for example. It kind of fits into quite Lisp history. I guess Pavel Curtis would have started in 1990 for Xerox PARC originally. Just to go to what Khaki Guest has been continuing to talk about. Welcome to Brown Guest as well, I guess. Khaki Guest says to Screwtape, it seems like you're trying to build a more restrictive Turing test using the input-output logs of an Emacs conversation. Is that accurate? Can you explain this idea of if it is intelligent, I'd like it to be like me. Otherwise, I don't know what intelligence is. Doesn't that seem a little egocentric? Is that a joke or a genuine definition of intelligence? Why do you think the link between input-output of Emacs human input-output is stronger than other forms of Turing tests? So I'm gonna misread Turing test for a moment as Turing complete. And Sandoval's system is very specifically, or first order logic, if we don't extend it, is not Turing complete for starters. It's and things like situation calculus, McCarthy's situation calculus, which I guess is prior to Sandoval's Leonardo calculus, are extended first order logics for reasoning about change. And so they're slightly more restricted than general purpose computer programs. And then what you're saying is, if it's intelligent, I'd expect it to be like me. I'm really just paraphrasing what Sandoval says about, well, he thinks his grandchildren are intelligent. So if a computer is intelligent, he thinks the computer will have to be similar to his grandchildren. This is in contrast to people who are using the terms AI to mean something a graphics card does with extremely specialized bulk matrix multiplication for a very short period of time on absolutely gigantic electrical and kind of memory and computing resources, which doesn't look at all like what Sandal's grandchildren were doing. And this is why I'm kind of saying, well, if I have an agent, and my agent is quite simple. It uses Emacs server and Emacs client to send lines.
Next, we have Modern Emacs Lisp Hardware Software Accelerated Graphics by Emmanuel Berry. He will answer questions via web conference. You can join using the URL from the talk page or ask questions through Etherpad or IRC. All right. Theoretically, this is the Q&A for the graphics talk. Oops, I have to unmute over here. Sorry, I'm in two places. Okay. All right. Here we are. Here in the Q&A for graphics talk, and not in the Q&A for the open mic thing, for which I had the wrong overlay. But I'm having a hard time getting the speaker on the screen. So I guess if people have questions, I can start to bring that out. Graphics. All right. And Emmanuel, if you are around, you can join me in the. You're around, you can join me in the big blue button room. Let's mention that here. So, around. And I will share. Let's see if I can find that. One of these. All right, I'm sharing my screen. All right. I'm going to put some music on in case the speaker wants to show up. It's okay. Maybe something has happened. Anyway, graphics and Emacs. Using a dynamic module, you can get a lot better performance than you might if you were trying to do everything in Emacs Lisp directly. And you can take advantage of the specialized code that other people have put together for things like matrix transformations and rotations and collision detection and stuff like that. There's also some other interesting things around simulating different objects, so making the objects responsible for themselves. That was kind of nice too. But I guess you would have to read the source code and then contact the speaker to find out more, because I haven't had a chance to look at it deeply on account of not really knowing a lot about this area. But it's there for people who are interested in it. All right. I'm going to say maybe we'll just follow up with Emmanuel after the conference. But we'll probably try to figure out how to bring over the general track now so that I will be on the development stream as well. So that we can do closing remarks eventually.
Ever used RQL written by Alpha Papa? Then that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So you query based on one of a set of attributes. Text search. There are several more. The presence or absence of certain properties, right? Using any combination of those if you want to dig down and find some data in an org file. That's the kind of query I'm talking about. It is somewhat equivalent to being able to write SQL queries where you match on things just for your org files.
Okay. I think we might have figured out our problem. It was DOS encoding. See if that works. No. Well, let's just do the easy thing.
I switched the development track over to just watching the gen track since I couldn't find Emmanuel. Yeah. Also, Eludom wants to mention the Emacs Carnival theme for December is the people of Emacs, of which you are all very awesome. Thank you so much for your patience. Today has been very interesting. But yes, at some point we can show that too. And we can basically wrap up anytime we like or hang out anytime we like. Hang out for as much time as we like also.
Okay. So this is, okay, at least I got as far as a working demo here. So now you can kind of see what's going on. And I'll just wrap that into a little prettier output. And you can see that it modified the value. So it's pretty darn simple. Again, all it's doing is completely replacing all of this content with whatever new value is given as its final argument after naming the data path. So the one refinement we can do, just to get a little more complex example going, we'll deepen our structure a little bit. And try that. So here now we'll say test 2. And we can take a look at the data file and see that it has adjusted that. Because test 2 was completely unique, that worked fine. If that were not the case, we would have had to specify the path using dot notation like this. And that's pretty much it. Took me much longer to figure out why it wasn't just working than it did to demo it. And again, what I really like about this program, besides the fact that I find it quite useful to just be able to stuff values into an org file from the command line using a shell script, is what I really like about this is that it's a whopping 190 lines of code, including all the boilerplate. And I will share the project into the chat.
So, Corwin, you're not using org element for this, are you?
Nope. Yeah, great question. Let's just get a little into the code. Or maybe it would be more fun to actually open it here. So the only real requires here, I do use cllib. Mostly I'm directly using the macros from org. Particularly, I'm extremely fond of this function. I'd love to see this just promoted somewhere deeper into Emacs proper, so that I don't have to load all of the org macros to get to this particularly useful one, which just tells me whether, ignoring white space, a string has any characters, has greater than 0 length.
Isn't that just string blank p?
So this is a little different. This deals with I may struggle to remember the details, but and it's possible that the non-org specific version has even been improved, or I didn't use it correctly. But I believe my experience was it didn't handle new lines, for example, quite the same way. So getting into what this actually does, most of the program is finding the relevant part of the file. You'll see that we start out by doing a depth-based search, capture the value that we're looking for. And then finally, we widen the buffer and keep handling the case where we might be being called from within Emacs in a narrowed buffer. This another probably should be documented at the top. So that is obviously going to load org. Just double check that. Yeah, it is going to load org. Yep, and we can see that because it didn't find the function until I loaded org, and then it did when I did Control H F to get definition of a function. So widen the buffer, and then I just start looking for the search. You can see I'm doing simple, regular expression-based searches here, looking for lines ultimately that start with a star. That was a little simpler format that didn't quite work out. So I'm searching for here. This is a little tricky, but I'm searching for a number of stars equal to the depth that I want. The depth that I want being calculated based on the number of dots that were in the query string. From there, kind of skipping some stuff, right? Once we find our starting position, then we're going to have to find the end of that, the section that we're going to read or replace. Text a tiny bit smaller.
So I checked org string. I checked org string NWP, and it's the same as string blank p.
Exactly the same code or the same result?
No, it's the same result. Well, it's the same check, but string blank p will return a match object, like a string match object, whereas the org version will return the string itself if it finds a match, as in if it's blank.
I don't remember that was what I ran into.
As a Boolean check, they are the same. If you use it as, is it blank or not?
So, yeah, I've talked for way longer. I literally thought this would be a 5-minute thing. I'm not sure if there are any questions on it, but just to simply answer your question, no, it doesn't use org element. This is pure regex-based work.
So the advantage of not using
the most complicated part was getting clean output.
Right. So the advantage of not using org element is that you don't have to load org or org element, right? And it's going to be faster.
Org element, that's true.
And it's going to be faster both because you don't have to load org element and because you don't have to run org element, like the org parser. But on the other hand, you end up loading. On the other hand, you end up loading all of org anyway. So at that point, it might just be better to use org element because it's more robust. For example, if you have a bunch of leading stars inside a source block or something, you don't want to misclassify that. So
matter of fact, I believe I had to do some fussing with it to avoid to deal with not just that, but drawers and things like that.
Right. Yeah. So
at the end of the day, that was just an extra 10 or 20 characters in the regular expression, so I just shrugged and wrote them. You can see there are a number of I happen to like writing regular expressions and find them relatively readable, so so it didn't bother me doing that. I've also done a bunch of work with org element with the dungeon project, which of course uses that extensively to pull data out of tables and so on. And indeed, I think that may ultimately be my solution. I've been kind of distracted on a side quest to improve the org table FM parser. There's a post on my blog about the work that I've done there, and recently started talking to Igor, the new org maintainer who took over in the last year or so from Bastian, just about what it would take to kind of pick that up, or at least get it to a point where somebody else could work on it. It's pretty dense right now. Show that up as well. So this thing is a bit of a monster, but at the end of the day, our goal is to extend the syntax, is to be able to use this org table FM syntax in other contexts. So if you haven't looked at org table FM, these I bar or these I markers are telling us to look for the table separator, so positioning based on the location of a table separator. I find that a little bit brittle, just because it's really easy to go in and decide, oh, it'll look better with an additional line separator in there, and then you know, and then all of these formulas break everywhere. So it'd be a little more fun to have at least variables in there, and that's kind of part of the scope. If we look, and here you get kind of a hint of the new syntax I'd like to support. Things like $, $_, keyword. It's probably a half-hour talk just to get into what every single one of these would do, but this post does give some context to that. And more importantly, there's a complete test program that worked the last time I was playing with it. And this gives you complete examples of all the syntax that the work in progress does currently support. You'll see some of these items are commented out. Those aren't supported yet, and before I would implement them, now, especially now that we're talking in terms of trying to take org itself this direction, you know, of kind of beefing up the table FM format parsing so that it could be used in other contexts besides specifically within formula. I wouldn't want to add features to it without discussing those. So this is just a simple, basically a literate test file, if you want to call it that. The perhaps key improvement here is naming all of the different capture groups, which just if you're working with really huge regular expressions, which this is, let me just make sure the whole regex is right in here. You can see it, yeah. So here's the actual rewrite. Just get a little bit so you can see it's kind of a monster. And that's all using RX. So hopefully that looks pretty familiar. Dollars for specifying a column, @ to specify a row. So I have the keys. Anybody else want to show and tell?
We're going to cut over to the automated introduction for the Saturday closing remarks in like 4 minutes.
That sounds brilliant.
Oh, but a quick mention of the Emacs Carnival. So the Emacs Carnival is a shared blogging theme where lots of people write about a specific theme, and then if you write about it, you can send your link to whoever's hosting the carnival, and it's a great way to discover other people's cool stuff. So if I take presenter, hang on a second, take presenter. Oh, actually, haha, I know, I'm going to make Elidom present it. Haha, you are now in charge. Okay, take it away. I make you presenter.
So I've been using Emacs for like 46 years now, back to Tico Emacs. And as I just said in the chat, I've found that the people who use Emacs tend to be interesting people in many different ways. And so this month, I'm just saying, let's give a shout out to some of the interesting people, you know, we've met along the way. And, you know, including some of the people that are putting on this conference are some of the most interesting and helpful people I've ever met. So thank you.
You're very kind. Thank you. Pardon me. I'll say more than that. Maybe I will. I completely agree with you, and I couldn't agree more. I think that's how Sasha and Amin and Leo really dragged me into this, you know, into being a volunteer. And I really, I'm sure we'll talk about this in the closing remarks, but I can't recommend volunteering for this project enough. It's just so fun to talk backstage with the presenters, and I don't know. It's an extremely engaging, really powerful.
I like the way y'all are so patient and awesome, and I can be just quietly having my little freak out here, and everyone's fine, and we'll even help debug things live as needed. So this is all good. Anyway, so if people want to participate, you basically write a blog post. If you don't have a blog yet, there are any number of packages in Emacs as well as web-based services. But really, like you can get something going with org exporting to HTML and maybe even figure out RSS, or you can use a static site generator like Hugo, or you can find if you can set up WordPress. That's another way to do it. Or you can email me your thing, and I'll post it on my blog and let me know who you want, how you want to be credited for it. Anyway, so you can share your story, or share your story about somebody else's story, and celebrate Emacs community. And we can send it to George also, who will then make links in that blog post.
And on the subject of community, I also heartily recommend.
Finally, we have Saturday closing remarks.
Beautiful.
Well, that's going Saturday close, and let's arrange our screen nicely. All right, we made it to the end of the first day. Woo! Thank you for joining us for the first day of EmacsConf 2025. Feel free to spread the word, because there is still another day of fun talks tomorrow. So hashtag EmacsConf and hashtag Emacs. If you do hashtag Emacs on Mastodon or Blue Sky or other places, I will probably find it. Or if I don't, you can just let me know also. The pre-recorded talks should be up on the talk pages already. The live talks, we'll probably actually get them up within the next week or two. I think they already started processing, so I just had to sit down and then work with our wonderful army of volunteer captioners to get them all nicely captioned. But anyway, so the pre-recorded talks are also up on YouTube, and I will eventually also upload them to TubeNix, which is a PeerTube instance. We will work on extracting live talks. If you'd like updates, please subscribe to the EmacsConf Discuss mailing list. If you've got ideas for making things better, we have so many ideas. I always end up with a very long to-do list after these things. Please add them to the pad. I'd love to hear from you on how we can make it even smoother next year. There are about 100 people watching on Gen and 100 people watching on Devs, which is really awesome. It's amazing to think that we can have an Emacs party for a lot of people. And we can only do this because of all the wonderful speakers, volunteers, participants, and very patient people in our lives who make it possible through all the time and support. So this year, we had a lot. Corwin did most of the hosting. Also dropped by earlier, so that's great. I hope Leo is okay. We managed. And I'm Sasha, by the way. I was running around backstage and occasionally dropping in to go all on the stream. There are lots of other volunteers who are not on air. So, for example, during the proposal review process, we got a lot of wonderful comments from JC Hillary, Trico, and James Anders Howell. captions from Amitav and Rodion, and other people have actually started also helping with the captions as well. So Jaybird just sent in some stuff today too. We are slowly working on getting a mirror in the EU set up, so it'll be a little faster for people. So thanks to Yang3 for lending us that server. Bavin and Michael and Ian and Jamie and Eeyore and Floyd Coder have also helped out as well. Thanks to the Free Software Foundation for the mailing list, the media server, and of course GNU Emacs itself, for which an astonishing amount of the scripting is done in Emacs. It's great. Thanks to RIP for the server that we're using for OBS, so that we can just VNC into it and I can manage 2 tracks without making my computer melt. It's great. And of course, to all the users and contributors and project teams that work on all the free software that this stuff is built on. Emacs, Org Mode, ERC, Tramp, Magit, or Magit, Big Blue Button, Etherpad, IkiWiki, Icecast, OBS, The Lounge, Libera Chat, FFmpeg, OpenAI Whisper, WhisperX, the Aeneas Forced Alignment Tool, Site Transfer, Subed, Subseg, Mozilla Firefox, MPV, and Tamper Monkey, and other things I probably forgot to mention. Thanks to Shoshin for the music, and thanks to people also who've donated through the Working Together program, like Scott and Jonathan and other anonymous donors. So that's our quick thanks. There's more tomorrow, but Corwin, do you have any parting words?
You know, my parting words, Sasha, are a thanks to you, and not just a thanks for the hundreds of hours that you put into preparing this conference, over the years and probably just this year, but also for all that you do for the Emacs community. You are a real unsung hero, even though I do hear your praises sung. They really can't be sung enough. In fact, I just this last week recommended to 2 different people your blog as a place to get a first introduction to Emacs. Your Emacs news is an incredible contribution, and just I want you to hear us thanking you. Thank you, Sasha.
Emacs is a lot of fun, and it's just, and Emacs people are a lot of fun, so it's all very wonderful. Yeah, we can wrap up here. People can keep hanging out if they want. I have a kiddo who is probably going to be back home soon, and will pounce on me for more hugs. So I will see you all tomorrow. For more probably the same time as
go ahead and shut it down, save our energy for tomorrow. We do like to run into hours long closing tomorrow, so we'll work on resisting that. I suggest we go get some rest and come back at it fresh tomorrow. Anybody else?
Yes.
Any concerns with that, or shall we go for it?
Sounds good to me. If you've got ideas, pop them into the Etherpad. And thank you so much for sharing this time with us.